evening, everyone, and welcome to Shit Moms Won't Say. My guest tonight, or today, I should say, is someone you should all know. Not only is she a great writer, a fierce mama bear LGBTQ activist, and a professional speaker, she is the queer identifying wife of a pastor who's sort of turned the religious world on its ass. Mom of three, and I'm going to pronounce it right because we talked about it, Jamie Bruesehoff. How'd I do? Bruesehoff. I did it.
You did great. I'm impressed.
I did ask her the second she got on. I was like, it's really nice to meet you. People mispronounce my name all the time. Please say your name for me 10 times. And now I got it. Bruesehoff.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to my show.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And we are not far away from each other. You're a Jersey person.
I am. Where are you?
I'm in New York.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah.
We're one state apart.
Yeah, I'm down outside of Philly now. We used to be way up north in Jersey, like in rural mountainous, like Jersey's version of mountains, which is always kind of a funny thing. They're big hills, but they're still pretty. But now we're down.
People are like Westchester is upstate. You're like, no, it's not.
Not exactly. No.
Yeah. Suffolk County, Long Island is mountain. It's not at all. But
it's all about perspective. It's a good lesson.
That's right. If you feel at peace there and you think it's nice, go.
Awesome.
Go there. So we have a lot of fun stuff to talk about because like I shared with you before we started filming, I don't even know how I came to follow you, but I have been like this ever since I have followed you. Like, it's so cool the way you and your family operate. And like, I want to hear that and we'll chat about it. You are, however, just because you are, part of like the religious God squad, you are not immune from the big mom three.
Okay.
I think everybody will understand.
Okay.
First,
I have no idea. I know.
Like I
should have done research here, but I didn't. So
I used to send them to people and then people were giving me really canned answers. So I was like, if you want to know what they are, go watch the show. But here we are, as we just found out, Jamie doesn't watch the show. Okay.
Okay, I've watched some, but no, not. I watched like your shorter Instagram videos. I did like when I was like figuring out who you were, I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. So I'm a fan. I just haven't dived too deep.
That's fair. And listen, I take any and all compliments very well. So first question, the big mom three, and this is tough.
Okay.
Did you always know you wanted to be a mom?
That's a good question. I guess so. I feel like for me, it was just a given. Like, I don't think I had, like, some people have that, like, oh, I want to be a mom. It's this desperate, like, need. For me, it was just like, of course, I will grow up. I will go to college. I will graduate and get a job and have some kids. And this will be my life. And so, like, I don't know. It was very societal norm in my head, which is funny given who I am.
I was going to say that is like the exact opposite of everything I've learned about you so far, but okay. So we're following up societal path. That's fine. We all break our cycles whenever we get there.
Exactly. I had some work to do. So
yes, and you've done it. So that's good. Yeah. That's good. Okay. Second question, the big mom three, and I'm pumped for this one. Because we'll get into your full family story in a little bit, but I am sure you've heard some shit. What is the shittiest or like most backhanded comment or piece of advice you've ever gotten from another mother or parent or anyone in your life?
Oh, goodness. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot. I feel like so we'll talk more about this, of course, but I happen to be the parent of a transgender teenager. And so when Rebecca was coming out and transitioning, I think the best thing that I heard, or worst thing, is that like all the reasons she was trans. Like, I mean, I heard like the vaccines did it, the GMOs did it, the toys we gave her did it. I mean, and those are probably like the most tame versions. Like it is amazing the things people will tell me, like, well, it's because you fed her red dye that she is transgender. Like, oh, and what's like ironic is like we were super kind of granola crunchy, like, and we still ish are, but especially when my kids were young. And so we ate all organic and they didn't eat dyes. And so I'm like, well, I don't think that was it for many reasons, including the fact that we were a dye-free household. But fascinating.
I've never heard, I've heard a lot of those, like, because there's correlations to everything, right? Like vaccines cause autism, this mouse causes Down syndrome. Like we have to blame. We're like a society that loves to blame. I've never heard the vaccine transgender correlation.
Yeah.
Is that like a common
one? It's not uncommon. I mean, for a while, there was at one point where like we went viral as like the face of this is what happens when you vaccinate your children. Like Rebecca's face was in some of these groups. Like, yeah, like complicated for sure.
That's crazy. Well, let's get into the third question, the Big Mom 3. What is a skill or superpower you had before becoming a mom that you think has really helped you as a mom?
I think my superpower is running into hard conversations.
That's it's funny really when good one.
Yeah. And I think it's just always who I've been. I go deep on things, like get really real, really fast. And so as a result, when I was raising my kids when they were young, and this continues to be true, I mean, now they're almost 15 and 12 and 7. But like when things come up, I'm not the like, let's talk about something else, Mom. I'm the, all right, let's handle it. And so my kids call them my pep talks. So like if something comes up, I will like get into it and be like, well, what do you know? This is what you need to know, whether it's like, societal issues, whether it's, puberty and sexuality, whether it's whatever, like I just run into these conversations. And so my spouse would get home from work when they were really little and be like, I would be like, so we had this conversation today, and he'd be like, how the hell did that even come up? And I'm like,
why?
I don't know. It just happened. Like I can't. Yeah. I just run into them.
I think that's a good superpower. I think it teaches mindful little children. There's nothing wrong with that. Speaking of mindful little children, every now and then there's somebody who comes on the show that I'm like, just shut up, let them tell their story. I think that's you. I want to understand, just sort of the culmination of the family and where you guys are now. As I shared with you before we started filming, I grew up in not a super religious household. I grew up in a Jewish household. I have family members who are very religious. I just don't talk to them. They're very religious. And like my wife and I were excluded from some really big moments because we're part of the LGBTQ community. So what you've done within the religious community to me is just totally fascinating. So I would love for you to share it, because I think a lot of my viewers are going to be just sort of blown away of how your family operates and where you've been and where you're going.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I'm blown away by how we operate, and I'm not sure it's always in a good way. But I mean, so here's some basics. So I am a seminary educated church professional myself. I came out of working in youth and outdoor ministry. I am married to a Lutheran pastor. I personally identify as queer, although I didn't really come out publicly until, I don't know, a couple of years ago to say that I'm bisexual and this is who I am, because I'm in this straight presenting relationship and all of that. And so when we were raising young children, we were up in northwestern New Jersey in a rural conservative area. And our oldest child was kind of gender nonconforming from the start. And we thought, okay, cool, we're super progressive. Pink is for everyone. And like patted ourselves on the back a lot that we were doing this in a really excellent way. And so we did. I mean, we told her colors and clothes are for everyone. Be any kind of boy you wanted to be. She's not a boy. So that was the spoiler there, and what we eventually came to understand. And so navigating her coming out and transitioning while my spouse is the pastor of a small congregation in rural conservative New Jersey. People do not think rural and conservative when it comes to New Jersey. I understand it's all on like a spectrum, but there were cows in my backyard. So like it was rural.
It exists in New Jersey. It does. And it exists in New York, 100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, I think for us, people always ask, like, how did you reconcile your faith and who your kid was? And for us, that was never a question. For us, we first, Rebecca, in the process of understanding who she was, went through a really deep period of anxiety and depression at 7 years old. And no one prepares you for that. Like, that's not in the parenting books. And when you're struggling with it, as we know, with so many mental health struggles, it's very isolating because people don't know what to do with it. It's even more so when the child is so young. Like, they'd be like, well, what does she have to be stressed about? That's not how mental health works.
You're like being born the wrong gender. That's stressful.
Exactly. And we didn't know that at the time, but trying to kind of peel back those layers. And so by the time we figured out, and Rebecca had the language for who she was, we saw such relief, such joy, such confidence and ability to step into herself. We watched this heavy cloud of anxiety and depression just disappear. And so from a faith perspective, we believe in a God who does not want pain and struggle for us. Like, that's not what it is. And so to see someone's light kind of explode and to see them experience the joy of being their full selves, and to think, well, maybe this isn't okay with God, there's such a disconnect there for me. Like obviously this is who God made her to be. And that was so clear in getting to know her and being able to lift her up in this way. And so it was never a question of like, is this okay? No, we're also in a denomination that had a framework and an understanding and an affirmation of LGBTQ plus people. Like, that was a gift we came from. So we're part of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. And while we have a lot of work still to do, we were at that point ordaining and certainly marrying couples and ordaining LGBTQ plus people. And so we had institutional support, which is a really big gift. Yeah. But even in our personal theology and understanding, like, we have 2 advanced religious degrees between the 2 of us, my partner and I. And like, this is something that made sense to us. We understand that God created the world with rich and beautiful diversity, and God is so much bigger than the boxes we want to shove God into, that we understand so much more was possible. And so that was never the question. The question was, how do we navigate this in religious spaces where we don't know how it'll go? So like, when Rebecca came out, it was like, hey, okay, well, you could lose your job. Like, even though our institution supported us, it doesn't mean the people on a congregational level would understand or affirm this. And so you could lose your job. We were living in a parsonage, a church-owned house at that point. So you could lose your job. We could lose our house. We could lose everything, or we could lose our kid. And so that was the choice. And that's not a choice. Like, no. I'm always going to show up for my child. And so we said, okay, so we're doing this. And we did a lot of education, starting really small. People always ask, like, how did you go about it? Well, we didn't make like a big announcement. We decided to put the church rumor mill to work for us. We told individual like leaders, and we're like, go disperse this information.
All of the church mice were like,
exactly. And out they went. And so like, they could process this and figure out their questions and have their initial reaction not be one that's public or to us. Like, people need time to process. And I get that. And then we had 2 rules. Our rules were this: you don't have to be on board. You don't have to agree with us. You don't have to, decide that this is great or, that the church endorses this, but you can have all the questions you want. You can't ask them in front of Rebecca. You can ask us. We will answer anything you want, get you resources, all of that, but you cannot ask questions in front of Rebecca, and you have to use her name and pronouns. Those were our 2 rules. Very simple. And by allowing that, it meant that other people had room to question and explore and wonder while keeping Rebecca safe. And we found that was really powerful. And I also think, like, I tell this story all the time, but getting to know Rebecca has changed people's understanding. Like, it's changing hearts and minds, but the first time she showed up at church herself, this one individual who has, super, super strong opinions, and everyone who is friends with him on Facebook knows it. And kind of the person that I was like, if I worried someone was going to be really bothered by this or have a big public problem with it, it could be this person, went up to my husband and said, listen, I don't understand this whole transgender thing. but she used to hide behind your wife and refuse to say hi to me on a Sunday morning. And today she ran up to me, twirled in her dress, and gave me a high five. What more is there to know?
Oh my God. That's so cool.
Yeah. And so like there's a lot more to know. There's so much more to know. And yet that's kind of the foundation we start from. And that's kind of how we do all of the work we do in the world. And then I have two other amazing kids. I will say that. I think Rebecca gets like the highlight.
They're getting
I have a 12-year-old and a 7-year-old boys who are, I call my kids, I am a parent of 3 spirited children. They are all intense and have big personalities. I don't know where they get it from. I just have no idea whatsoever. But they're awesome and entertaining, and they keep us on our toes.
I love that. Are they very protective of Rebecca? Or, I mean, in that, like, I should kind of frame it this way. Do your younger kids understand the importance of like who Rebecca is now?
Yeah. So I think that my 7-year-old is the most interesting because he was a year old when Rebecca transitioned. And so he really only knows Rebecca as Rebecca. And so as he's gotten older, he certainly hears in the work we do and around the house, or when a camera crew shows up, like transgender this and transgender that. And so like he's kind of absorbed it and is like, oh yeah, she's transgender. That's cool. And I think he's still kind of understanding what that means in the wider world. He's 7. And so it's just like such a non-issue for him, which I think is really cool. Elijah, my 12-year-old, was really, especially in the early days, was Rebecca's biggest supporter. Like in the first time we went out, like we hadn't really publicly said anything, but we were using her name and pronouns at home, and we went to like the playground, and he was like running around and telling every person on the playground, like, this is my sister, she used to be my brother, and this is what she goes by. And Rebecca was like, whoa. But like that heart for showing up was so sweet. And so that's still him. And I think he has a very real understanding of what it means to be Rebecca in the world and why we do the work we do, because like they get brought along on this ride, like, oh, kids, like camera crew showing up today, got to pick you up early, or got to do this, or would you mind being in an interview? Are you up for some B-roll today? And we try to really follow their gut on that. Like, they're like, don't want to be involved. Cool. You don't have to, but he understands why our family does this.
Yeah. And I mean, it's amazing. And that's like exactly kind of where I want to go. Cause I feel you guys have done just like a world of good. You've really challenged something that I think people who are part of like, under the LGBTQ umbrella, plus umbrella, and are religious struggle tremendously to be themselves. So you guys being so outspoken and so like welcoming, and hey, this doesn't have to be a thing. Like the story you just told about Rebecca showing up in a dress and twirling, like that is baseline. Like that is all you need to know. Somebody's being themselves. That's it. So I'd love to learn like the work that you're going to continue doing and what that looks like. And, how can people support, what's next, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, at this point, we go into schools and workplaces and communities and faith spaces all over the country to talk about what it looks like to go beyond that baseline, to create actively safer and more welcoming congregations for LGBTQ youth, and to help people understand, like, I think there's this idea that like, oh, well, my church isn't saying anything bad about LGBTQ people, so we're not the problem. But what we know is that people of faith are doing the loudest and most significant harm to the LGBTQ plus communities personally and politically, and with a whole lot of power. And so silence is not okay, is not positive. It makes you complicit. And so the idea that people of faith really need to speak out loudly and publicly and boldly about that LGBTQ plus people are made in the image of God in our theology is the language I would use, and that they are whole and holy, and that like it's not like, oh, we need to support them and bring them in because these poor people, I mean, have you seen the depression and suicide rates and all of that? No, our church is a better place with queer people in it. Our church, the body of Christ, is more fully present. We have a better understanding of who God is. So when we talk about being made in the image of God, like if queer people are made in the image of God, that means God's queer. And so that means that straight and cis people are missing part of God's image when they don't know queer people. And so really kind of flipping that all on its head and helping people understand and kind of just that they need to name and claim this in a very public way. And so I am in the very early stages of working on a book, which I'm excited about, but too early to share much about, but hopefully news will be coming about that. And then we work with churches. We have a really cool event in the New Jersey portion of our Lutheran church called Faith, Hope, and Love. And it's an intergenerational event that brings together people ages, 70 to 80 plus, and to gather around about how we create safer and more welcoming spaces. And so we're looking forward to that, our 4th or 5th event in March 2022, and kind of just trying to give people the tools to how to do this. Because I think so often people want to do the right thing, they just don't know how. And so trying to fill that gap. And so we're doing all of that. I mean, you can follow us on social to keep up with it and invite us to your community. We love to come and meet people and get to know them in virtual. It's not my favorite, but it means we get to go a lot more places than we could go otherwise. And so, yeah, that's where we're at.
It's awesome. It's so cool. And you guys are really digging into the whole, there's such a huge difference between true allyship and understanding and support. It's so different. And by the time this airs, we'll have wrapped our Queer Voices project, but that's really what it's about, right? Yes, you can support queer people. You can support everybody under this umbrella. What are you doing to make it better?
Exactly. Well, yeah. And you look at the political landscape in our country right now, 2021 was a pretty shit year for queer people. And the legislative attacks are going to keep going into 2022. And so it's really a time for people to show up and to figure out what that means and to speak publicly and not to be quietly supportive. That's not supportive. We need bold and loud answers and conversations to be happening in homes and at dinner tables and at family events where it's Uncle Joe said whatever Uncle Joe says. Well, I need you to say something, because that's where we start to actually separate fact from fiction and change understanding and evolve that understanding. The other space that we're really deep in right now is transgender kids in athletics. And that being such a big conversation right now. Rebecca is a gender cool champion. She works with an organization called the Gender Cool Project. And I recently came on staff there to work on Play It Out, which is our new national education campaign to separate fact from fiction about transgender kids and non-binary kids and their relationship to athletics. Because the truth is, Rebecca plays field hockey. She loves it. She's not the best on the team, and she knows I say that, and she endorses me saying that.
Come on, poor girl, leave her alone.
I know. I'm going to very publicly tell everyone how much you suck at field hockey. No, she doesn't suck. But she has to work really. Exactly. She has to work really, really hard at it. She is not out there leading the team or taking over, or all the stories we're hearing about what trans kids in athletics are doing. They're all built on this big, scary, fictitious story. And here's this very real kid who's I want to do what I love, be with my friends, and get better and work hard for my team. It's very simple, as much as you can get into the nitty gritty and all the complications and the medical side of things. But when we're talking about kids, K to 12 athletics, they just want to play. They want to be a full part of their school community. And this is an important way to do that. So
it also should never matter, right? It should never matter to begin with. I don't care if you've been, if you sort of transition later in life and you've been an athlete in your, the body you were born in, and then whatever it is, it shouldn't matter. It extra shouldn't matter in children.
Exactly.
The coordination any kid has is terrible. It's terrible. It doesn't matter. I know.
The biological diversity of humanity needs to come into the conversation too.
My daughter, who right now she's female presenting, we're assuming she's a female unless she tells us she is not, could beat the shit out of any one of her male presenting friends. anyone.
Absolutely.
Without even
Absolutely.
batting an eye. It would take one
Yep.
slap and those boys would be on the floor.
Yep. Well, and that's so much of this is like we know is rooted in misogyny. It's not actually about equality or fairness. It's misogyny. And that,
Nonsense.
Yeah.
It's nonsense. Just leave everyone alone. Let everybody just be happy. What do you care? All right.
Yep.
Well,
100%.
thank you for being here. I have 2 final questions and then we can wrap it up. So first of the 2 wrap ups, you have kids. So remind me of the ages. I know we have 7, 12, and Rebecca.
And Rebecca will be 15 January 1st. So by the time this goes live, she'll be 15.
15. Perfect.
15.
So 15.
That's scary.
15's an age. So there's a wide range. What is something with such a wide range of children right now that you cannot live without?
Ooh. This isn't like a thing, but time outside. So like we go hiking or walking or riding bikes or whatever. I always joke that it takes 2 miles in the woods for my children to like come back to the human beings that they are. like when, when we're all, I mean, I feel it too. Like I need the woods for that too, but like they can be all at each other's throats and in like the intensity of, young people, 2 miles in the woods. And suddenly I have the kindest, sweetest, most grounded human beings, love each other. I'm like, it's magic. It just takes 2 miles.
Look at these trees. This is incredible. It's extra air,
Yes. I'm like, is there something else in the woods that I'm missing? Have you been eating mushrooms? Have you been? No, it's really just being in the woods.
Maybe
exactly.
If it works, great.
Exactly.
All right. Last question. What is something you know now that you wish you knew before becoming a mom? I think I wish I knew like the complexity of the journey ahead, like in both like hard and beautiful and awesome ways, like, and how much these little people who are come like to you are born or come into your life with their unique personalities, like how much they're going to grow and change and how much you're going to get to know who they are. And it's probably not going to be who you thought they were or who you expected them to be. And that's whether they're trans or not. I mean, that's like a really obvious example, but it's true for all our kids. And I also think that you're not going to be who you thought you were going to be or who you expected to be. And so just an understanding of like going in with that hope and expectation and preparation. I would wish that for myself and for other young parents. I love it. None of us would believe it, but I love it.
No, exactly. Never. And then that's why I do not give advice to parents because they're like, no, this is my course.
Yeah, no, this is what you do. Go ahead. We'll see.
Exactly. You do you.
Yeah, whatever works for you is cool. Well, listen, thank you for being here. Where can people follow you and the whole crew? What's the best way to see you guys?
So I am on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I'm not really on TikTok, although my name exists there. So like a growing edge for 2022, maybe. But I'm at Jamie Bruesehoff, which my name's really hard to spell, but
we'll tag it out so you can find it, and you'll see why there's all of this chatter around the last name. You'll be like, oh, that's how you say it. Okay.
Exactly. And then Rebecca is on all of the things as the real Rebecca. And her name is also spelled differently than some people may expect. So all the tags.
I will tag all of it. Well, thank you so much.
And you can get to our website and all of that from our social platforms. And we'd love to, so come and talk to us and message me. We'd love to hear what you think, what you need in the world, and how we can, both be the biggest impact.
Love it. Thank you so much. And thank you for watching Shit Moms Won't Say. We'll see you next week.